shaping the world of work since 1967.
The history of the employment industry goes right back to the 19th century. However, it was the post-war years that really saw the rise of temporary help firms, some of which would become legends of the industry. World War II took millions out of the workforce. Labour was continuously in short supply. In the UK and the United States, agencies attempted to fill the gap. That's when Russell Kelly started Kelly Services, and law partners Elmer Winter and Aaron Scheinfeld launched Manpower. Throughout the 40s, it became more common for women to work, and the industry played a key role in increasing their participation in the labour force. From humble beginnings, the employment industry grew further, and so did challenges, including restrictive government regulation that no single operator could tackle alone. Like the Ubers of today, temporary help agencies disrupted the world of work, and policymakers' reaction was outright prohibition. In 1949, the International Labour Organization called for the abolition of private employment agencies. So the idea emerged: the industry should unite. National federations representing private employment services were established in the Netherlands, Belgium, and the United States. Meanwhile, some of today's major players were setting up operations in Europe and Asia. In 1960, Fritz Goldschmeding and Gerd Elbaut created Randstad. In 1963, in a Japan experiencing rapid transformation, Hiromasa Izui launched what would become Recruit. And in 1964, Philippe Forial d'Estezet founded Echo, which would later become a founding company of the Adecco Group. It was in 1967 that national federations representing private employment agencies in Belgium, France, Sweden, Switzerland and the UK formed in Paris the International Confederation of Temporary Work Agencies, known as SIET. Because one voice and actions alone were less powerful than the voices and actions of many. And later that same year, the Confederation held its first ever international conference. The 1960s saw employment agencies extend their reach, bringing jobs from beyond their traditional white-collar heartland to blue-collar workers too. However, the swinging 60s were also a time of civil unrest, and as employment agencies became the target of violent attacks, the industry realized it needed to improve public perception. To gain a better acceptance, the industry needed to set global quality standards. In 1971, SIET adopted its first code of ethics. At the same time, the Confederation expanded globally. Founding members were gradually joined by Australia, Brazil, Denmark, Spain, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, the United States, and China. However, the sector still faced criticism from unions. Industry leaders understood that social dialogue was key to gaining acceptance. And the first positive outcome of this joint effort was the sectoral collective labour agreement signed in the Netherlands in 1971. Soon, many countries would score their first legislative victory. In the 1970s, private employment agencies gained legal recognition in Ireland, France, Germany, the UK, and Brazil. But the decade was also marked by two successive oil crises, triggering recession in many parts of the world. Governments were committed to fighting rising unemployment, and they took an ever more positive view of private employment agencies. In 1987, the OECD report Sustainable Flexibility provided solid evidence that agencies did indeed provide jobs in times of unemployment. Meanwhile, agency numbers were growing. During the 1980s, other countries like Japan legally recognized agency work, and collective bargaining led to major social innovations such as the establishment of bipartite training funds, FAFTT in France in 1983. A significant contributor to the industry's growth was the introduction of personal computers in the workplace. The breakthrough came with IBM's PC. Companies adopted IT systems rapidly and needed skilled people to operate them. agencies were happy to source this scarce talent. Following the fall of the Berlin Wall, barriers for the employment industry also fell with amazing speed. And with the introduction of the World Wide Web in 1991, a better connected world enabled recruiters to communicate faster than ever before. Markets got closer too. 1993 saw the creation of the European Single Market. That same year, Siet urged the European Commission to liberalize labor markets in Germany, Italy and Spain. And it paid off. Restrictions imposed on agency work were lifted. Year on year, the sector improved political perception by demonstrating the positive contribution of the employment industry. And the results were palpable. The ILO RICA report acknowledged that prohibiting private employment agencies was counterproductive. This prepared the ground for a revision of the hostile 1949 Convention, and in 1997, the ILO adopted Convention 181, a huge milestone for the industry. For the first time, it recognized the positive impact of agencies on labor markets. As the 90s gave way to the new millennium, the industry continued to boom and to consolidate. Competition prompted mergers and acquisitions against the background of increasing globalization. In 1996, Switzerland's Adia and France's Echo merged, creating Adecco, the world's largest HR solutions group. In 1998, Italy was the birthplace of GI Group, which under Stefano Colilanzi would become the country's largest Italian agency. Manpower continued to grow and acquired Elan Group and Jefferson Wells. And in 2007, Randstad bought Videor and created the world's #2 staffing company. The industry started to expand its services into direct recruitment, career management, RPO and MSP, known as the alphabet soup. Another growth driver was enhancing professionalism and responsible practices to differentiate the good guys from the bad guys. They sent a powerful message. Siet members were pro-employee and were improving labor markets. Established in 2005, the Brussels-based head office produced further evidence of the industry's added value. 2008 saw another major victory as the European Commission adopted the Directive on Agency Work. It recognized that temporary work agencies, as employers, contributed to job creation and established the principle of equal treatment. But the party was short-lived. By the end of the year, the world economy had been hit by a major financial crisis. The industry suffered a series of layoffs, and the number of agency workers fell massively. Fortunately, the industry's strategy of diversifying by HR service and geography had increased its resilience. By 2011, all BRICS countries were members of the Confederation. New economic dragons joined, extending its presence to Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. Meanwhile, innovation and digitalization continued apace. Recruiters embraced social media, apps, and platforms, while maintaining a smart combination of tech and touch. At this point, a name change seemed to be in order, and in 2016, Siet made way to the World Employment Confederation, a global organization bringing together 170,000 agencies from 50 countries, supporting millions of workers. Through its members, the World Employment Confederation has been shaping the world of work since 1967.